Coming to you from the Strings and Things studio in Ventura, California, this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. Welcome.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, the book that I picked, maybe you can hear it in my voice. Dang it, I waited so long to have one of my books picked, and then I picked this one. But
it's not a bad book.
It's not a bad book. But we'll get into that.
What is the book?
The book was The Tattooist of Auschwitz. Actually, it has a longer title, but I think that's by Heather Morris.
Does it have a longer title?
It's like the true life story, based on the life story. Anyway.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Tattooist of Auschwitz, a novel.
Oh, well.
I guess there is some, based on the powerful true story of love and survival. And there is that, both of those in there. Let me just give you a little brief summary. In April of 1942, Lale Sokolov, a Slovakian Jew, is forcibly transported to the concentration camps of Auschwitz-Birkenau. When his captors discover that he speaks several languages, he is put to work as a Tätowierer, the German word for tattooist, tasked with permanently marking his fellow prisoners. Imprisoned for over 2.5 years, Lale witnesses horrific atrocities and barbarism, but also incredible acts of bravery and compassion. Risking his own life, he uses his privileged position to exchange jewels and money from murdered Jews for food to keep his fellow prisoners alive. One day in July of 1942, Lale, who's prisoner 32407, comforts a trembling young woman waiting in line to have the number 34902 tattooed on her arm. Her name is Gita, and in that first encounter, Lale vows to somehow survive the camp and marry her. A vivid, harrowing, and ultimately hopeful recreation of Lale Sokolov's experiences as the man who tattooed the arms of thousands of prisoners with what would become one of the most potent symbols of the Holocaust. The Tattooist of Auschwitz is also a testament to the endurance of love and humanity under the darkest possible conditions. From the publisher.
Cool. What drew you to want to pick this book? Why did you pick this book?
Because I'm a sucker for a really good cover picture, and honestly, the cover picture kind of intrigued me.
Okay.
It's using color to do what's the thing on the I can't think of the word in photos where
vignette.
It's a vignette, but the focus is on the backs of this man and this woman, and they are clearly holding hands. And then I thought, wow, how awful it must be. I didn't know that the Tätowierer was a Jewish person, a prisoner, having to mark his fellow prisoners. And
I don't think I really ever thought about
I just
that
assumed it, I didn't really think about it, and when I saw the numbers, I just figured a German did that to them. But it's the thought of one person having to mark other people in his situation and the pain of doing that, of causing that pain on someone else. I wanted to hear that story. And I haven't really, other than Corrie ten Boom's A Hiding Place, I really haven't, and what's the Schindler's List, I really haven't I haven't read many books about Auschwitz. I just knew it was a horrible thing and a horrible place, but I didn't actually read it's not the kind of topic that I read for fun.
Right. No.
I'm more of I'm a sci-fi person.
No.
But I'm a sucker for a love story too, though.
I was not excited to have this book happen because it's such a tremendous emotional journey to go on. Which, there's things you have to bear witness to, and it's we just had a big anniversary of Auschwitz. Is it 75 years?
That sounds right.
I suppose it'd be 75 years since it was liberated.
Yeah, that was last year, I think. Yeah.
And so, that was an important topic that was very forward in the media.
Yeah, I think it was a timely book to read.
Yeah.
I also was not I wasn't excited about it. I do like a love story, so that was what I was like, okay, it's not just about
it's
the concentration camps
in the midst of a whole lot of ugly, horrific things.
Right.
How
and
do
like
you
I said,
find
it wasn't a book that I ever would have chosen to read for myself, and if I'm honest, I tried to give up so many times reading this book, and I told myself I couldn't do it, and it's only a couple more hours because I listened to the audiobook, and it's not that long of a book.
No.
It was
I
a
really
7-hour
wanted to give
audiobook.
up, though.
It was very hard.
It's not an easy read.
I could only do about 20 to 30 minutes at a time. There was one day when I did an hour, and that
You just feel horrible after.
was too much
Yeah.
to do in one day. And it's such to be able to say that, right? To be bearing witness to one of the most horrific things to happen on the planet, and to have the luxury to step away from it.
Right? To say I don't want to read this, but
Yeah.
you should,
It was
have
on
a lot
a
of
bestsellers list, so that recommended it sorted to me, but then I don't usually follow other people's opinions, so I don't know why I did this time.
I had a lot of problems with this book. I have a review pulled up that sort of summarized a lot of how I felt about it, because I wasn't enjoying reading it, not for the story itself, because obviously it's a hard thing, like you said, to bear witness to, but was important for me to read because I, like you, had also not read a lot of things on this topic unless I was like in school and had to or whatever. My problems with the book came from the book itself and the author.
I hear
So
that totally.
This is a review from Goodreads by a person called Abby. I don't know who they are, but they said there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Holocaust fiction books in the English language alone, but this is not the one to read. Which is like my main point is that I do 100% believe this is a story worth telling and worth knowing.
Yeah.
I really had a problem with how it was told. She said that this kind of book is hard to rate. It's based on the true story of Lale Sokolov, a Slovakian Jew who volunteered to go to Auschwitz to save his older brother, and through a combination of true grit and luck, he's able to survive and even fall in love. Who wants to give the story of a Holocaust survivor just 2 stars? Isn't that a bit heartless? It's not the subject of the book I'm rating. The book isn't well written. I wasn't surprised to learn that Heather Morris is a screenwriter, because she relies heavily on dialogue here and really struggles with prose, although to be honest, the dialogue leaves a lot to be desired as well. Scenes change in the matter of a sentence. The dialogue only seems to be broken up with stage directions. There's no atmospheric build-up. There's no sense of tension or urgency or terror. It's all very one note. The characters, even Lale himself, are flat and poorly developed. The whole book felt very amateurish, and I can't recommend it. And that's sort of how I feel.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There were emotional cues that were definitely like.
I think sometimes some of the scenes themselves you would be hard pressed not to have an emotion with some of the scenes just of the action. Your brain can fill in the blanks, but I agree that I think the author relies on us filling in those emotional cues rather than, and some of the things that they say happen feel embellished.
To me, it wasn't. I also have read in the reviews that this isn't necessarily a very good picture of life in Auschwitz, that she took some liberties with the story that are inaccurate.
I wonder if some of this is because most of the story is not in Auschwitz. The tattooing happened in Auschwitz. He was in a neighboring camp of Birkenau. They're 2 different camps.
Yeah, but the point that I was reading reviews about, I can't remember what the organization was that sort of discredited the book.
Oh, gotcha.
Saying that it was some like historical society or like a museum or I don't remember what it was.
Them being able to smuggle so many jewels and keeping it in their mattress.
There's accuracy to that, and actually
it's based on a man's life, a true story.
Like the Sonda Commandos blowing up the crematory, that was a real thing. Like that was really how they did it, and it was really because they thought the Russians were coming sooner. Like they thought they'd be there, and they were timing it right. Like that's real. But I do, having read other things, I haven't like read extensively. I watched Schindler's List, Diary of Anne Frank, which is not in the concentration camp, but it gets there. one of my favorite books, which I would like to talk about a little bit more later, which is The Devil's Arithmetic by Jane Yolen. I think that is in Auschwitz. And I'll talk about what it is later. But anyway, like, I think I've been taken to this place or places like it in literature in the past. And he was having a different experience in the camp than most of the people.
Right. He was more privileged in his experience than the majority of people who lived
and that does color his narrative, because he didn't. I did appreciate that. I mean, there's plenty of people that would have had his position that would have just reveled and enjoyed it for themselves. I felt like he used his position as best he could to help others. Well, and I don't know if it was just Noel, it's just he felt I feel like maybe helping others helped counteract the overwhelming guilt he must have suffered otherwise by marking people.
Well, and he explicitly says that.
I mostly just I didn't feel drawn in to the story, number one, because I wasn't excited to start reading it, so maybe I went into it I tried to be open when I started listening to it because I wanted to, but I think I just really had a problem with how it was written, that it didn't draw me in. So the parts that were difficult to listen to and to read and to process, I felt like under a better author would have struck a harder chord with me. Whereas, like, I understood what happened and I understood that it was atrocious, but I didn't really feel a whole lot because the author didn't take time to really linger on anything. Not that I wanted her to, because it was hard to listen to, but I don't think that it went far enough to engage me. And, like, the whole thing with their love story is I couldn't tell you at what point they felt. Like, how did they fall in love with each other? They saw each other on the line, they didn't talk to each other, they started hanging out, and then all of a sudden she was, like, the most important thing in his world. And it's like, she didn't take any time to tell us, like, from A to B, how it came to be there. And all of a sudden it was just like, this is
I wonder if in giving each other comfort, that's what, if the relationship, I mean, maybe when most of the relationship built up individually in their heads when they were back in their individual barracks, because they didn't have a lot of time. Right. And I have a hard time believing that they really could have snuck off so many times off behind the barracks and somebody not rat them out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean I know eventually paying people off, but, like, people had lives in the camps.
Right.
True.
Like I mean, what sort of life? What semblance? And, like their ability to have a love affair, however poorly described.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously did happen because it's a real story.
Yeah, it's their way of clinging to their humanity too. Like it's the little bit of normalcy that these two young people could have.
Yeah.
I just don't think she took enough. It really felt like she was a screenwriter. Yeah. And that this would have been an amazing movie. Yes.
I did not know that about her, but she took more time to describe the cruelty of Mendeleev. Yeah. Than Mengele, was it? Mengele. And his cruelty, and I could picture that like it was a movie, and so that makes sense.
I thought that the characters were underdeveloped. Like, I couldn't tell you a thing about Gita.
No.
You know, you don't really know a whole lot about her, and part of that is she doesn't want Lale to know a whole lot about her. Yeah. But at the same time, you don't really hear anything from her perspective a lot of the time.
Until later in the book when she's on her own. And then you get to hear... But
even then, one of the points that it really stuck out to me is there's a whole scene when they have left, they escaped, they ran away, they're in a house in... I don't remember where they are.
He's not.
No, but when she's by herself. When she's by,
so that's what I'm saying. She's not by herself. She's
with other ladies, but she's not with.
But the point when she's in the house. Yeah. And like the way that the book reads is like she's in the house by herself. She hears a noise in the garden. She looks out the window. She sees her two brothers she hasn't seen in 2.5 years. She runs out. She gives them a hug. They joke about how they're wearing Russian uniforms. They leave. It's like that could have been such a big moment for her to like express something, and to me, a lot of the book felt like bullet points that the author intended to go in and like expand upon later.
It never did.
Maybe. I mean, it's third person limited, as told to.
Mm-hmm.
I did. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
When they got separate.
But Lale had so much to say in his own mind and his own... Yeah. I mean, it's his story.
Yeah.
But you hear so much about him, and you don't hear anything from Gita. But it's not her story, I suppose. So,
no, but I mean, it is her story.
Because she's the whole reason that he keeps fighting and keeps going.
Right.
So she is an important part of the story. It would be nice if, as the reader, we could fall in love with her a little bit the way he did.
Could you entertain the idea that that's not perhaps this is deliberate, that it's not a luxury that these characters have? Because it gets pointed out again and again. Like,
once she gets on her own, the farther that she gets from the camp in the story, the more angry I got. Because I kept going, he doesn't even know her last name. He doesn't even know the village she's at. Wow. I could feel for him, but I could also feel like, how are they ever... Is this really it? We suffered through all of this, and now they're never going to find each other?
I didn't think that was going to happen. No.
I mean, I knew it wouldn't, but I wasn't positive.
But I think that's probably a realistic reality for people.
Yeah.
One thing... This has nothing to do with the story itself, but, like, I was thinking later about the ending when they are separated, and he goes to his hometown. Mm-hmm. Well, first he goes to the train depot in whatever town that is, and then he goes back to Krumpaki. Was that the name of his village?
Yes, yeah.
And he sees his sister and his neighbor, and they're like, you should go back to the train depot and wait for her there, right?
Yeah.
But she knows where he's from. She knows he's from Krumpaki.
See, that's when she was getting away.
If he were smart, he would have stayed there because he doesn't know anything about her, but she knows his name, and she knows where he lives.
That was the most tense part for me when they're describing her being there, and how are they gonna connect? Like, and there he is.
That's how it worked in the story, but it was like, okay, sure, that happened. Okay, so, the end of the story. Okay, done.
So, I was reading this on Kindle, and as a family, we share the Kindle account. Well, my mother-in-law sees this book, and she's like, oh, yeah. So she starts reading it. It gets farther than I am. So every time I keep trying to read, it's in the wrong space. And I finally said, are you reading this? Oh, yeah. Isn't it great? I go, stop.
Please.
I'm reading this for our book club. I'll let you know when I'm done. Oh, I go, it didn't come out free. I bought this book so I could read it. And then you can read it after me. And then she finished it up, and then she's like, now can we talk about the book? And she said, this was from my mother-in-law. Her comment was, I just don't believe that all of a sudden he's walking down the road and there she is. She just isn't there in the car.
It must have been how it happened because it's his story. She interviewed him, like, the author interviewed Lale.
Yeah, I buy it.
But it's like... But
the author...
It feels like they rushed it to just finish it.
She interviewed the grandson.
No, she interviewed Lale.
Lale, okay.
Yeah, I listened to...
We don't know anything about grandson.
No, there's notes at the end of the book.
There's notes at the end of the book.
Which is my favorite part. It's the son.
I didn't read that part.
That's my favorite
part. I listened to the part where she talked about
that part was good.
Her interviewing Lale, but I didn't get to the part with the son.
I love the afterword by the son. That's the best part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, him talking about what his parents were like after surviving this.
That's actually, it was an incredible part. That was an important part of the story because that filled in blanks that should have been in the story.
Yeah, maybe I should go back and
go back and read the prologue because that's actually where she wraps things up, which is not really, as a good author, were you supposed to, but...
I think that... I mean, that's kind of also the lasting impression I took away from the book is to hear the epilogue of... like how their lives went after the war. It's an important reminder that all these Eastern Europeans, that was just the sharpest but leading edge of the suffering in their adult lives.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you have some questions to sort of lead our discussion?
I do. Okay. So since we've established that this is a story about Lale, the first question I have is, how did you feel about Lale when he was first introduced as he arrived? And then how did your understanding of him change throughout the novel? Like, was he just a meh character and then you cared, I
mean, he's supposed to be very charming. And
I didn't catch that.
I think he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like his life outside the camp before he volunteers to take his brother's place. Like, he talks a lot about how he went on dates with women and how much he loves women and being around them and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's supposed to tell you that he and he gets his way a lot with a lot of people.
Yeah,
in the camp
he
and
does.
outside of it. So
Yeah,
I think
he
that's
does.
part
it's like
of...
he knows
He's a likable
where
guy.
to push the edges too.
Yeah.
Like,
you can see why people do like him. I found him extremely obnoxious. Like, just, like, his internal monologue, and I can't relate to his experience.
I personally applaud him not speaking those words out. I probably would have got shot if I were him way early on, because I wouldn't have kept my mouth shut. I would have been... I would have had a hard time not being a smart mouth to that guard. He felt like a
poorly written romance character. Whereas, like, his internal dialogue with himself was so, like, flowery and, like... I can't even put into words how I felt about it, except that I found him really obnoxious to listen to. And it's like, everything was really embellished, and how he felt about things, and it was all, like... that. I mean... I don't want to say that everything was very dramatic, which is like, I understand but even when he's in and out of the camp, like beforehand, and, you know, I don't understand his position, except that everything seemed like, I don't know why I just did not like him. I can understand why people do. I can't understand why.
I did think he was a bit naive, because when he volunteered to go to this camp, he thought that he was...
Well, I think everybody thought that.
This is outside of the imagination of all humanity. Even though this kind of shit's happening on our planet right now in different countries.
That you think, I'm going to do this and I'm going to save my family. My family will be safe back then.
But I think everybody felt that way.
But think of that. The same people that would ask you to do this are probably liars.
But if you don't have that mindset going in, then how are you ever going to live to see the other side of it? The people who go in knowing that they're probably not going to leave probably didn't leave.
I didn't know what to expect of Lale as we met him, actually, because he's riding in the train car, and he's, you know, kind of disgusted by the people around him, and how they're...
bucket in the corner that ends up being all over everybody anyway.
Yeah, well, and their, like, lack of containing themselves, or lack of carriage.
Decorum,
like, thank you. Yeah, I mean, like, how much decorum do you have when you're shoved in a cattle car? But he seemed to be maintaining his own.
I think he came from a better place in life to begin with.
Which we don't know yet. We learned that, like, way later, that, he wasn't just, like, a country bumpkin helping his dad with the horses.
He had city life. And
he had a...
see, I thought he was from the city from the beginning. That's just the feeling I got from him because of his manners.
Yeah.
And that might just be my bias.
Then he gets there and he's behaving explosively, like lighting the clothing on fire.
Well, okay, I got it, because it's hard to contain your anger. You came in thinking, okay, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to be hard, but then you have no idea how really hard it is. And the disappointment and the shock.
They had just... I mean, they immediately strip everyone of their humanity.
Yeah.
And he immediately shows you what he thinks of that. And yet, he can get over that internal, that internal conflict of, like, I'm an angry 20-something. This isn't how I want to be treated. Shit, I have to get with the program to live.
But he never stops pushing the envelope where he can and when he can.
Which tells me he's very smart.
Yeah.
In that he's very aware of his circumstances. But how he even gets, you're right, he must have that charm that he even gets the guy who he knows who could turn around and just shoot him and not have a problem with it.
Every time he pushes his guard,
I just go, are you stupid?
Or but you knew that kid was such a little shit and wasn't going to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. If you push him too far, how do you know he's not going to do that?
I mean, I guess he did. Yeah.
At some point he did.
We never hear who ratted him out. Do you guys think it was... Because when he gets ratted out for his stash, it's right when his guard asks him for the silk stockings, and he asks the boy to get the silk stockings for him instead of the father. Like, he never learns, or they never tell us who ratted him out. And maybe that's something Lale never knew in his real life.
Right.
But who do you guys think it was?
I think, but it was also the same time that the new group of people came into his block, and they didn't quite make the same connect. It was early in their connection with him.
Not the whole gypsy camp. It's the newer
people
gypsy.
after
The new set of
after the gypsy. No, the gypsies.
They rounded up all the gypsies, and then he was by himself.
Yes.
And then they moved in another group of people. I don't remember.
That time?
I think it was the second group, when the second group of gypsies, that he didn't have the familial connection with.
I don't think they were gypsies. I think they were from a different country. They were just a different group of people.
They were just a different group of people.
I don't remember who they were.
Yeah.
It wasn't important. Like, that wasn't important to them at that point. Okay, your real family is separated from you. Your surrogate family gets...
Yeah.
I found... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the parts that are vivid and shocking certainly are sticking with me. Like the people in the bus and the gas, the trip into the crematory to identify the numbers. Like, the fact that those experiences happened
are real.
Yeah. Even though poorly told. Like, when you shared with me that she's a screenwriter,
I'm like, okay,
I got it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, this would be an amazing movie.
Yeah.
But it's lacking the flesh of a narrative tale.
It has no prose. Like, there's not
enough true
like, I couldn't say a quote to you right now. Yeah. Of some piece that I liked.
A lot of it's like, Lale said this, he went here, he talked to this person, you know. There wasn't a lot of, like, how, I don't know. At the same time, I feel like there was too much of his internal dialogue, but not enough of anybody else.
It's almost like a story written from a storyboard. When they make a storyboard before they do the...
That's what I'm saying. It felt like some chapters were like bullet points. Yeah. That, like, she meant to go in later and, like, fill in with, I don't know.
But something just wasn't.
Well, I like Richard Armitage as a reader, but I did not like some of the production qualities.
The production was not good with the audiobook.
There's a certain tone, and suddenly his voice sounds like a lot older, like an older man is narrating.
It's like he starts talking, and then his tone gets higher and higher and higher, and then the producer's like, okay, let's start back over. So he goes back down to the beginning. Yes. And then his voice gets higher and higher and higher, and then they're like, okay, cut. Okay, start back from the beginning. Because it's like...
And that high point...
It happens like mid-sentence.
That high point sounds like the man who's telling, like the young man who's living.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden it's like very deep. And very serious.
And then the odd, like, times when they came in and reproduced a word.
Yeah.
This like very somber things happening. Lale.
Like, you could tell it was like cut and paste this little word in the middle of the audio. It was really bad.
That was very annoying.
It was very bad. It was distracting.
And that's on the Audible production company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a Gita question. So survival in the camp depended on people doing deeds of questionable morality. Lale became a tattooist, but how did Gita's choices affect her survival? What about her friend who befriended... Okay, it's not... I don't like this question. Her friend didn't befriend the Nazi.
Oh, yeah.
The Nazi forcibly took her and made her his mistress. So
I just want to quickly say I also take issue with the publisher synopsis that you read a second, at the lead in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Forcibly transported. He wasn't actually forcibly transported.
No, he wasn't.
That's the horrible trick of it.
Yeah,
he thought he was signing up for one thing and got a way different thing.
Which is what Gita thought too. I believe her. I don't think she was forcibly transported either.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, I don't think that her friend...
Because she left her family behand.
Yeah. Her friend had no control over her situation, just like none of the Jewish people in the camp had control over their situation. So to say that she befriended a Nazi when it's like, no, he took her and raped her repeatedly...
Yeah, and she had no power.
She had no chance
until the one and only time that she actually
asked him for something,
and she put herself at great risk to even do that.
Yep, and then she was tried as a collaborator.
Oh, I didn't actually get that far.
Oh, sorry.
Spoiler. That's okay.
I finished it all.
So this book, this particular synopsis, which is from
I don't think Gita
litlovers.com. So if you go to Lit Lovers, some of the way they're phrased. So when they're talking about the questionable morality, I don't really think there's a such thing as questionable morality when you're a camp survivor. I think whatever you do to keep living is okay. If you have to keep surviving, I mean, short of me turning in, say, Anne, so that and sending her to the gas chamber so I can survive, that I kind of question.
Well, think about Jakob.
Yeah.
Lale tells him, like, do what you must to survive. You will survive this as long as you do what you must. So he did.
Yeah.
And
they talked about it.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I chose to do this questionable thing in order to be able to survive in the camp, and you do the same thing, so I understand where you're coming from. And they had an agreement that I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, but that's just because I can survive.
Don't tell me anything.
Yeah.
Like, he did his part to minimize, like, the damage that his role could play.
And Lale did that in as much as he could as the tattooist, you know, to try and be gentle. I don't know. Like, he was very aware of it, so it's not like...
Even when he just gave a slight pressure of the hand to squeeze to get her attention so she wouldn't freak out and reveal herself in a way that was going to draw bad attention to herself. So,
I think the question that you read, though, is like about Gita specifically.
It says, how did her choices, but I don't remember what choices she had.
She didn't seem to have any control over her story, which is true for the majority of the people in there, but all the things that happened to her, it's like Lale got her moved to the new job.
Yeah.
Lale brought her the medicine so that she could live, and it's like I don't remember her having any
choice in anything.
Making any decisions about anything.
No. So I saw that there was a question about Gita. I'm like, oh, something about Gita, but you're right. I don't actually think she had. Everything was...
Again, this is told from his point of view.
But he was married to this woman for a very long time. You think he would have learned how she felt in certain situations, or her side of the story enough to tell the author a little bit more about her, I would think.
Yeah.
Did he survive her? Did she die before him?
I can't remember.
He lived 3 years after she died. The author meets Lale, and he interviews her and gets right down to it. And he's like, I don't have much time, but I'm going to tell you my story before I'm back with Gita.
Gotcha. So this is something that was different to me that I did not know until this book. That says that the book makes clear that there were also non-Jewish prisoners in the camp. How did the treatment of Jews differ from that of non-Jews? How did differences manifest themselves?
I don't think we were shown that at all in this book, except the gypsies. Because you knew there were lots of different people in the camps, right?
I didn't. I just figured they were all Jewish people, but it makes sense because pretty much anyone the Germans didn't... The Nazis... Well, I'm not saying Germans. The Nazis, because not all Germans were Nazis. Specifically Nazis, the ones that they didn't like. You all got I kind of figured they got the same fate.
Yeah, I didn't notice any difference between the treatment within...
Other than they were housed...
Specific groups.
Other than the groups were housed separately.
Okay, so they did go over the different kinds of labeling, and you could read other people in the camp and what role they might play and who to be wary of.
Right. And there was differences between their labeling system, like the political prisoners wore red or something. I don't remember what the system was, but...
The reasons that they were there, because not everyone was there because they were Jewish. Some people were educated people that spoke up against...
Like the original Tattooist.
Yeah. Okay, well...
I don't think they really did a great job of... And perhaps it's not the case that there was a great diversity of people being held in Auschwitz. Maybe it was primarily Jews and Gypsies as they filled the camp. But at the beginning, I guess they did describe the differences.
Yeah, there was a multitude of different labels that were assigned that he noticed, and I don't remember what they were, but
ultimately, I saw it when they were going through it. I saw it as like a screen for the way that the Nazis wanted you to think about the people, who they deemed undesirable, like the lazy people. Like there's something like that, like the lazy layabouts. And I just couldn't imagine, like, who is that actually in society that they needed to be picked up and taken to a prison camp? Like...
Yeah.
Well, in the Romani, even in modern day, they are often... they are shunned everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I know they're calling them gypsies in the book, but I kind of feel like they're referring to the Romani then being
There's
the same.
There's a lot of names for that group of people, and I don't know enough about them to name them.
Mm-hmm. It's a cultural, I think, because they keep themselves separate from the other cultural influences.
I'm thinking, and my sister-in-law can maybe inform me better, but I don't think she's listening. That I think the appropriate term is traveler.
Yeah,
and
travelers.
That covers all the different.
Because there's Irish travelers, there's Romani travelers, there's.
I think that covers all the different people, nomadic peoples of
Ort
who
sort of fall into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they were such a blessing to Lale, you know. Mm-hmm. It was like his new family that he found and the children that he was around, and like you can tell how thankful he was to be with them. And I think that probably would have come from any sort of group that he was with.
Yeah.
But it was nice to hear his perspective about them.
And the contrast. So like I think the Nazis mushed everybody together and looked at everybody in the camp as non-people and saw them all as such, regardless of how they labeled or used and misused them. But I love when he's sitting around chatting with them and he says to one of the men, look, outside of this experience, we wouldn't cross. I wouldn't cross the street to say hello to you. And the gypsy man says, I wouldn't cross the street to do anything to you.
Yeah, if I hadn't crossed the street away from you first or something.
Exactly.
It's like,
that actually was a good line.
To show, like, how that homogenizing or mixing and having to see each other in the same human strife while your oppressor is seeing you as no human at all. Like, there's something to that. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But there's something to that.
It's a shared experience that they could, relate to each other.
Yeah.
Any
More
other
questions?
Some of these aren't really good questions, but Gita, in what ways were the relationships between Gita and her friends different from usual friendships between teenage girls, and in which ways were they similar? I guess I wasn't really connecting that she's a teenage girl, because in some ways she was much more wary about things than he was. Sometimes she was just very cautious, and I thought maybe she'd already, as a female, had already seen stuff.
Well, she'd been there longer.
She'd been there longer, so even though she was younger than he was, I felt like in some ways she was older.
Well, I mean, isn't that true? I mean, women, like the archetype of a woman, like she has more to risk, more, she's more vulnerable. She has to be more cautious. An archetype of a male character is they can be brash and brazen and go and explore and poke around and find out more.
Yeah.
And she needs to
be guarded.
To be guarded.
What was the question? How does her...
They're just... You're comparing and contrasting her friendships. It says, how do the relationships between her and her friends differ from usual friendships between teenage girls?
I mean, they're much more their life experiences, what they're experiencing is more tragic, so I think that their relationships between each other is more important, rather than if they had just been friends outside of the camp, it would have been far more casual.
But they still kind of stayed together as a protective pack.
That's what I'm saying.
I think more because I agree with more because of the camp. If they were in high school, are they going to be
dragging her to work every day so that she can hope to roll call when she's dying?
Yeah.
Like, did you have to do that in high school?
Yeah. No.
I didn't. Where were you? I didn't see you in homeroom.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
the officer came in and wanted to beat you up, but I didn't let them.
Or when I can't think of her name, the girl Silka comes to join them, and the girls accept her with no strings attached, and like, yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of that, that would have been a more of a stretch, but
might not have been so gracefully done, especially with.
But they make a point to tell you that they are very accepting and open to, and they like a couple times they mention how he's thankful that they have, or she's thankful that they have opened, been open to her joining them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that is kind of stunted. That is a part of the book that's sort of stunted and not well explored, because it's really from his observation than as told to.
But that's true, except that there are times when we see her perspective. So it's not one or the other. It's that I think the author tried to make it from his perspective, but at the same time, it's like we could have had more from her. It's his story, but it's based on his story.
Yeah,
it's based on his experience.
To a point of view,
exactly,
and stick with it, or handle them both with the same
equally. Yeah,
I feel like they should have been equal. I would have liked to hear more.
It's a love story. I want to know about both of the people, so I'm more invested in them as a couple.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like a lot of the love seemed to be more one-sided, only because I guess I feel like she was grateful for his companionship, but that's not the same as being in love. I never got the sense that she truly was in love with him, other than one of the questions that they had was, had Gita and Lale met in a more conventional way, would they have developed the same kind of relationship? How did their circumstance change the course of their romance?
I mean, I can't say that for sure that they wouldn't have experienced the same level of intimacy with each other, but it's more heightened in that situation, so it was easier, I think, for them to cling to each other as a source of comfort.
I think that they could have had the same shallow development of their love affair, though, if you think of the time that they're living in.
Yeah. That's true.
If they were having a sanctioned relationship that their parents were in on, everything would have been like chaperoned, and
you still had to sneak around.
And
she
was really quite a young teenager. Like, I want to say she was 15. Does that sound right?
I don't know.
And he was already in his 20s.
Right.
So I don't even know that they would be a suitable coupling. It's hard to say for that time.
Well,
it's hard to say for that time.
Their parents would have highly been involved, and they might have been a matchmaker.
Yeah.
So,
and I think they come from similar, like,
villages,
socioeconomic.
Yeah, they were from the same country. They were both
but their
Slovakian,
roles and their place in society outside of the war, I think, seemed similar. Like, she had a nice little house. They had a nice little house and land.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
they would have been well matched.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe if.
But we don't know that much about Gitas.
Yeah. I can't tell. So
sorry. So Heather Morris, tragic loss on your part. You should have given us more about Gita.
It feels to me like she wanted to tell this man's story, and I think that she could have told his story relying less on the romantic aspect of it, because it sort of felt like a B plot to him surviving in the camp, and then there was like a B story of him also being in love with Gita. Like, the two could have been...
Because there's lots of times where he couldn't even meet up with her because he was working.
And it was surprising to me when I wasn't really paying attention to when they told you the date at the beginning of a chapter. I wasn't really paying attention to the date when I realized that it was like, oh, this has been like 2 years.
I was, because I wanted it to be done so bad. Yeah. It's like, we know this happens in the spring of 45.
Right.
Let's get out of here.
How close are we? I think I started paying attention to the timestamps near the end. And I was like, oh, wow, it's a lot. They've been in there a long time.
Yeah.
Which means that she had more time to develop their romance. In the story.
Guess so. I don't know.
Whatever.
I'm kind of over it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, there's
I gotta say, I don't recommend this book. Because I'd like
to have options to recommend something else, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think that this is important to bear witness to. I think his role, I mean, he's a real person who held this role.
Mm-hmm. The thing is,
was he truly the only one tattooing all those people, though? Because millions, wasn't it like tens of thousands? Just him and Leon.
He had a helper. Yeah.
He had a helper.
Not all the time, though.
I don't know.
Well, and lots of people came in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
who tattooed them? Because he
seemed to have the day shift. Yeah. He did.
So maybe that's it. Maybe there were a night shift because 24/7 people were coming in.
Well, so it was interesting. Some things that I was urged to learn a little bit more about. One, mostly accidentally, because I was at Barnes & Noble the other day, and there is a book by Dr. Miklos Nilitzi, Nyslzi, and he is a Jewish doctor who came in. I think he was there for less than in the last year, and he was there for maybe 9 months. And he was recruited by Mengele to be part of his team of physicians.
Wow.
And he was forced to do all kinds of
horrible
things. But it's his first person. It's called... it has a few... Because it was translated, it has a few different titles. But the
that sounds better.
I came across
a first person sharing their own experience instead of someone
romantic. As a tool of Mengele. Yeah. I opened a random because I thought about buying it. It was like an $8 book, and then I was like, I can't go there again.
No.
So that was one thing.
Yeah.
And second thing was, I opened it and I read a couple paragraphs, and it was like, I've heard about the atrocities of Mengele. I don't need to actually
Yeah.
I don't want to read so much about Mengele that it glorifies his part of the story.
That's absolutely not what this would be, though.
Oh, good.
It's Auschwitz, a doctor's eyewitness account, and it's this man's
there's only so much
first-person account.
Horror that a person can subject themselves to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's one thing having someone else subjecting you to it. It's another thing to intentionally go to read that. I want more joy in my life, and that doesn't help it. So.
He was a Romanian doctor. There's a book called The Gray Zone. So a movie called The Gray Zone. So you just kind of knock that out.
I just read that this book, 2 years ago, I read an article that it has, the rights have been bought to turn it into a series.
Oh. Well, yeah.
So
it could be.
Well, because
it's in production, I suppose, that it could be something.
The bones are there.
That's what I'm saying. It would make a great something.
Yes.
I don't think it makes a great novel.
No.
And I want to acknowledge that when I said that I was over it, when I thought about it, it seems a little insensitive.
I'm
over this particular book and Lale and Gita and that story. Obviously.
I'd watch a show based on this book.
I'm over this book.
Yeah.
This selling of it.
I'm not over this story.
No, I would watch the film
maybe
or
the
whatever.
Story needs to be visual.
I suppose so.
The other thing that was interesting,
if it's not going to be better written, at least show me pictures,
is to read about the Sonderkommandos who manned the gas chambers and crematories.
That's a horrible job.
It was horrifying. That they did get better treatment because the work they were doing took so many calories. But they also only kept a group around for 6 months, and then they had their turn. And then they bring in another group.
Wow.
Thousands of people held that role.
For going through that role, their reward is to be gassed themselves.
Yeah.
But maybe in some way that's a mercy, because it's hard to, how do you live with yourself having been forced to do that?
I don't know.
So there are people who survived that role, who
oh wow.
And I think actually that's what it sounds like.
The book was written by?
No, The Gray Zone is based on this doctor's book, but it's told from the point of view of a Sonderkommando. Oh. And so a nicer book.
Yeah.
You want a nicer book about the Holocaust?
I need
a more well-written book. Because there's no nice stories.
No. But a better written...
I'll go watch Schindler's List.
Well, that's a terrible... all I can say every time you say it is the little girl in the red coat.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books, and I think it would stand up as an adult read, is The Devil's Arithmetic by Jane Yolen. She's a very prolific writer. She writes children, adult, fantasy, The How a Dinosaur Behaves picture books are her books.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But she also writes, really excellent young adult and adult fiction. So The Devil's Arithmetic is about this little girl named Hannah, who she's probably about 13 or 14, maybe 12. And it starts in present day, and she goes to happens at the same time as Easter. Passover meal with her family. Okay. And she's so mad because all of her classmates are Christians or Catholics, and they are all eating. I think there's a description in there of all their mouths are sticky from candy, or she'd just been at her friend's house and her mouth was sticky with candy, and she's so mad she had to go eat bitter herbs,
right,
and go sit with her family in the hot dining room. And while she's at dinner, she passes out from how hot the room is, and when she wakes up, she is a teenage girl in Eastern Europe, and she lives through
time travel.
It's time travel, and I think she takes on someone else's role. She takes over someone else's. She takes over the conscious. Think Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Oh,
she takes over the consciousness of someone else, and then she lives that girl's life through the camp.
Wow.
It's a fantastic book. I'm remembering it very vividly, and I think it's been 20 years since I read it.
Wow.
And again, I think it would stand up as an adult read. But it's much more
personal.
Everyone is all of the characters that populate that book you bond with them.
Are well developed.
Thank you. Yeah, they're well developed.
You like them. You care about what happens to them.
You care about what happens. I mean, granted, some of this is a little foggy in my memory.
I cared about what happened to the characters in The Tattooist, but the problem was she didn't give me enough to believe that. I don't know. It was.
Yeah.
To keep going. I wanted to believe in Lale and Gita and the people. There was the German woman in the office that looked the other way. Bella, who was a good person.
She was a German.
She was Jewish.
She was Jewish.
She was a prisoner, I think.
Yeah.
Else.
Just in another, Jewish, but in a privileged position.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
okay.
Just, I want to give her the author a little credit that perhaps that was all intentional, because the people living this, it was unrelenting, and they didn't have a chance have these bonds that we wish we could have had, even with the
fair enough. But I also was surprised that 2.5 years went by. I didn't feel the passage of time, but that could also be a publishing decision.
I could say what I feel about this book and what we feel, but if you look at the reviews, it's a very well-reviewed book. So your opinion could be completely different, and it could have been, I could be wrong. Everybody has their own opinion. So I'm not saying that I can't recommend it.
I think you gave it some very thoughtful criticism.
Right, but the majority of the reviews are pretty high. So...
But is that like the review you found of you don't want to shit on this book?
That's true. But that's what I'm saying is you could read it and it could be something that's more meaningful to you.
It was a hard book.
Yeah.
It was hard to get through. I'm glad I got to the other side. I wouldn't read it again. I don't know if I would recommend it because there are probably...
I just feel like parts of it are problematic.
Different ways to experience this content.
Yeah. There's a lot of other books.
Still honor this content.
Okay then.
There's some first-person accounts of Sonder commanders who buried their accounts so that then they're in the probably you could go to the history of the Museum of Auschwitz and
the Museum of Tolerance.
No, there's a museum.
Right.
Auschwitz that curates all those first-person documents. Could probably have
rely
a richer
on them.
experience
That's true
through those, but
What's our next book going to be?
Well,
I think we've decided
have a different plan.
Somebody
we needed a palate cleanser.
We're going to take a break from books at the moment.
Sort of.
We talked vaguely. I don't remember if we talked on air on the podcast about
I don't
it.
think it was on
we
air.
haven't.
Yeah. So we were talking about maybe let's just watch a movie. You know?
Oh, we did say
a movie based on a book.
Is this a movie club or
a book club? Yeah.
It's a movie based on a book.
We talked about picking a movie to go see, and there is Anne has a tote bag that says the book was better. I'd like to think that the Tattooist of Auschwitz would have a tote bag that says the movie was better.
Or the miniseries was better. Watch it on Netflix.
I'll make you that tote bag on the other end.
I don't know if it's out. I think it's out now. We're going to watch Emma, which is based on the Jane Austen. I'm pretty sure it came out last week. If not, it will be out by the time you're listening to this. And it's a film that's new this year. So there's other adaptations of it. But this is the one. I can't remember the girl's name who's in it.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay. I did not know that was her name. I've seen her in a different movie, and I thought she was really good. So the trailer looks really funny, and I'm excited to read it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to watch it.
We've sort of been prepping ourselves for it, haven't we? Didn't we just start?
Well, we're going to watch it. I think we're all going to go on a movie date together and go to the movies. So if y'all like going to the movies, you should take a girlfriend and go see it. And then we'll talk about that in our next episode, which I'm going to use this as my segue to lead into if you have a recommendation of another book to read or like what we have read recently that we liked. We talked about that last time. So my recommendation this month is Emma. I wanted to, because I'd never read any Jane Austen before, I listened to the Audible Originals version of the book, which is a dramatized version, so the different characters have different actors, and it's narrated by Emma Thompson, and it was fantastic.
The first showtime scheduled for Emma are on Thursday, March 5th in the evening. So
it came
out on the 21st.
It's already out.
I just went to the app.
Well, the app is lying to you.
I think the movie is out. Oh. Or it will be out by the time you're listening to this. Okay. We'll have to pick a date and go see it.
Thursday.
But yeah, I would recommend Emma. It was very
Century
cute.
Downtown has it tonight. You're right.
I have read Pride and Prejudice.
Uh-huh.
And so I do like Jane Austen.
Where do you think it's out?
It said it came out on
Maybe it
Friday.
was limited release.
I don't know.
Yeah. We'll figure it out, don't worry.
We will go see it. We'll worry about it later. Yeah, I had not read it, and I found it very enjoyable to knit and listen to. And I started it while I was also trying to finish The Tattooist, and I had to stop and finish The Tattooist so then I could enjoy fully Emma, which I very much enjoyed. So it was a good palate cleanser for me, and I think it'll be a cute movie. And Bill Nighy is in it, and he looks hilarious.
I love him so much.
Wait, who?
Bill Nighy
is in Emma?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which Bill Nighy are you thinking of?
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill Nighy.
N-I-G-H-Y.
Oh.
He's a British actor. You would recognize him.
You should have sensed the trap.
Yeah.
I did, but I
two favorite things I love him in. Love Actually. He's the burnt out rocker.
Yep. Is he Davy Jones?
Yes.
Yeah, he's Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean.
My favorite is he's the hated stepdad from You Got Red on Ya, Shaun of the Dead.
Oh my God, he is in that movie.
He's the stepdad, whose name I can't think of, which is part of the character.
I forgot he was in that. I'm gonna watch that again. I love that movie.
Is his name Martin? What is?
I don't know.
Because that's the thing of like, hello.
I forgot he was in that. Anyway, he's in Emma, and it looks hilarious. I'm excited now that the movie or the story is fresh in my mind, and knowing the character he plays, I think it's going to be very entertaining.
Ooh, yeah.
Does anybody else have a book that they've read?
Well, my mood lifter was the freebie from last month. One of the freebies from last month from Audible, which was Tinica Jones, read by Retta. Mm-hmm. And it was.
I wrote that down. I haven't listened to it yet.
Delightful. I was laughing out loud.
Can you tell me how to spell that?
I thought it was Tanaka. Uh-huh. So Tina.
Like Banaka?
Yeah. Tinaca. I'm just gonna double check that.
Did I already talk about The Glass Blower? trilogy?
No.
Oh, so good, that. So good, so good. Let me find a good synopsis. It's set around... let me find my synopsis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blah, blah.
Like Banaka, but with a T. But it's Tinica. Tinica Jones.
Yeah, I wrote that down when you had recommended it to me, and I have not listened to it yet, but I will because I love Retta, and it looks hilarious.
She does not disappoint.
Okay, good.
There are several nods to Ventura County in the book.
Okay, then.
Okay, so
what was the name of yours?
It's called The Glassblower is the first book, and then there's The American Lady, which I'm kind of partway through, and then The Paradise of Glass. It's a trilogy, but the first book is really good just on its own, by Petra Durst Benning. It's about three sisters set in Germany, and their village is they're all glassblowers. Their father dies and with no sons, with just these three girls, and their mother died when they were young, so three of them just pretty much rule the house. And that's the thing, is they're women trying to survive without being forcibly married into other glassblower families, without being belittled. Each one has like a different strength, a different personality, so that they don't starve. They actually go to work for one of the other glassblowers. But they mourned their father, who loved them dearly. They had a very special relationship. And then the youngest one, who's very creative, she secretly goes into her father's workshop and starts blowing glass. And she teaches herself blowing glass. And then next thing you know, she creates Christmas baubles that are sent to America. And how we get Christmas ornaments, the first glass Christmas ornaments came from this village, for reals, in Lauschburg. I think it's Lausch.
So is it sort of like Tracy Chevalier takes like a piece of art or an idea from history and then does a historic fiction from that idea?
Kind of, yeah. Mr. Montgomery of Montgomery, no, not Mr. Montgomery, not Montgomery Ward's guy, but another famous, Woolworth, Mr. Woolworth of Woolworth's department stores, if any of you are old enough to remember Woolworth's. It was like a Woolworth's 5 and dime kind of place. But my
grandma had old wool from there.
There's old Woolworth's in downtown Oxnard that was converted into like a hip.
It's a cool building.
Place.
It's a very cool.
I've been there.
It's a very cool. It's a coffee place.
Well, it was a long time ago when I had been there. I don't know what it is now. Well.
So in this village, things have been done the same way for centuries. The men glow the glass, the women decorate it and pack it. But when Just Steinman passes away unexpectedly, his three daughters have to learn to fend for themselves. Feisty Joanna takes on the practical approach of looking for work. Ruth follows her heart, hoping to marry well. She comes to regret that. And dreamy, quiet Marie is the one who secretly learns the craft of glass blowing. And then they do so well. And they have a neighbor who is in love with Joanna, but it's unrequited for a long, long, long time. I'm not at the point where they ever get together, but anyway, the lives of these three sisters are really, really interesting, and how they develop, and you really root for them. And so The Glassblower is an excellent book, even if you don't read the other two books.
Sounds good.
It's good on its own.
I like series.
Yeah.
Keeps me interested in the same author's work for a little longer.
I need to go back and read the prequel to The Witches. I don't remember what it was called.
I think it was The Birth House.
That's what it was. Yeah, I want to read that.
It's not. It's not that I found easily. It's not an audiobook.
Oh.
So I might have to
I'm going
really
camping
read it
later in March, which is always a good excuse for me to read an actual book.
All right.
So maybe that'll be my camping book.
There you go. I mean, sometimes the search in Audible isn't great, so
that's true.
If take another go at it. Yeah.
So since I hadn't done my homework, the last book.
Yeah, I think you need credit for the fact that Karin finished The Witches of New York.
I was so happy to go back to The Witches of New York.
Did you like it?
I totally loved it.
I keep thinking about that book and wanting to reread it.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
I liked it too.
I found myself going, oh! I could see it as a movie in my head.
It's a good book.
It's so good.
Well, April, our book club will be a movie club. March, excuse me. Our book club will be a movie club. Yeah. April is my birthday month, and I get to pick the book. It just happens.
That's right.
So,
fantastic.
I have one that I am excited about that I've been holding off on reading that I think I will just stuff my...
She's going to put one book on all the cards.
One book over and over, so I know that's the one that gets
as long as we go through the right rituals every time.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable.
I'll put it in a mug or something, and we'll pull it out, and I'm excited about it.
Well, with our new organization, I was very, concerned about our totem containers, but I found...
You found your totem container?
I'll debut it when it's my turn.
Once we've all used our totem containers, we should take a picture of them all together for Instagram or something.
Now, you're not stuck with the owl, even though the owl is very good.
You can use the owl or you can choose your own.
Oh, okay.
It's just most of those were yours, so they just all stayed in there. The owl
I
is very
stacked
good,
the deck
though.
and I still got that. Okay, anyway.
You didn't know.
That wasn't a bad
You didn't know.
book.
It wasn't bad. I just was disappointed.
Challenging...
It's the first book we've been reading that I was really disappointed about.
Yeah.
Wow, it was worse than Grapes of Wrath.
I would strangely say I enjoyed Grapes of Wrath a lot more, and I complained about the Grapes of Wrath a lot.
So just so you guys all have it in perspective.
I was sad that Grapes of Wrath was
and
over.
Grapes of Wrath is at least twice as long.
Oh, it was 3 times.
Yeah, but this was such more of a struggle.
Okay, but there was more story they could have told about the Grapes of Wrath.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't want to bash on another woman trying to pursue her art, but could John Steinbeck be a better author? I mean, it's well into.
I complained a lot about John Steinbeck,
but I'm just saying, could he be a better author?
Yes, I could maybe contend that. I think I don't know if the book I'm trying to recommend and read books strictly written by women this year.
I was gonna try that, but I lost the list of books I had.
If you have to read one by a man, read The Hangman's Daughter.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
My recommendation is written by a woman.
Those already, because I would throw those in as a suggestion.
All of my recommendations are by women.
I had a really good list and then I lost track of it.
I just discovered Octavia Butler.
Oh, well, welcome.
She's fantastic. Have you guys already read her?
I've just read a little bit, short stories.
I just started with Kindred. So there's another set of stories that so anything from her, I'll only read this one so that we can maybe, I may then and make other choices in my...
Go through your choices.
I am finding myself hoarding books that I want to wait to throw in my
I need to find a new book to start now because we're going to have it at least a month before we do the book.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that's going to be. But I did find that Audible originals, they do more like Emma that's narrated by somebody with a cast. I've been struggling to finish Little Women for months because it's so friggin' long. And I just found a version of it that's narrated by Laura Dern, who's my idol, so I might just switch to that instead.
That's so perfect.
She played Marmee in the new version.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
I'm gonna that movie.
I think I'm gonna listen to that.
I love all iterations of it, and I did read that book as a kid, and
I have been trying.
Okay,
it's so long,
but it is. It's
so long.
Are you kidding? I read that book a gazillion times. I
have not read it before. This was. I think I started right before Christmas, and I was with my cousin reading it, and she's read it about 1 million times, like you.
Yeah.
And she would look over, and I'd be just crying, and she's like, "What part are you at?" I watched the movie with James, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay."
I'm a purist, but I gotta say, that movie was the best way to tell that story.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. All right, let's wrap this
up. That's all I'm saying.
We will see you in March with our movie review of Emma. So I hope you guys, if you want to join in, it's less of a commitment than reading the whole book. So I hope a lot of you will join us.
It's a 2.5 hour commitment?
Maybe. It's also not a long book. So if you if you wanted to read along, I highly recommend it. But we will see you guys in March.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.